Warning. This show is for adults by semi-adults, so the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. If you struggle to understand politics, we explain it from an independent, libertarian point of view. With all of the irreverence it deserves, we toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, Chris Spangle, a 15-year veteran of politics and media.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Oh, we got 3 viewers. Look at this. We're just rolling in the viewers tonight. Welcome to the bonus show. Here every Wednesday night. Normally at 7 o'clock. Tonight we had an issue. There's a technical issue. I was just, I can't get into it. With me tonight is Brian. How do you say your name? Wolgamuth?
Actually, really good. Good.
All
that
right.
works.
Perfect. Look at me. I'm growing as a person. And then there is Reinhold. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just kind of burning up here and under the lights. This summer's going to be fun this year. So
Please
do some work on that.
Respect Walmart and don't say anything like that. And then Christy Avery's here. What are you on, a treadmill or what?
Yes, I am in my lovely hot tub room on the treadmill.
Ugh.
See,
soup.
Christy, I was going to say, Christy, my hot tub room's over there. So, I mean, these guys have to upgrade.
You have a hot tub room?
I have a hot tub room, yes.
You have a hot tub in it?
Yes.
You also swim in your own feces?
Yes, right. And we keep all of our Aldi products right there next to it.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't know if it's worse or better that I just have a 5-acre lake.
Yeah, you're swimming in fish feces.
Turtle, fish, yep. It's about anything.
Snake, you name it.
So I was driving.
My wife calls it chupacabra.
Chupacabra.
Yeah, my wife calls we got big snapping turtles. They're probably 2 feet in diameter on their shell. And she calls them chupacabras.
Yeah, turtles are nasty. They'll bite the hell out of you.
Oh, yeah.
They were eating the fish as we were pulling them out. They're jumping on and grabbing them.
I was looking for an article here. So, I'm driving home today, and I basically see just like this crazy cloud of smoke, and I'm like, well, something's on fire. And it was in my hometown of Plainfield. We had a fire. Let me show you the visuals here in case you're watching on the YouTube or in the Facebook group, Dear Leaders Court. You can join that and watch on Wednesday nights. Let's see. Where's the window? There it is. Okay. Fascinating radio. So I'm driving and I see this, and this is a far view. This is actually really close to where I live. This is on top of the Wish TV building. And it was a big pile of smoke.
Miles.
Well,
If you turn 180 degrees, you see my old apartment building.
really?
Mm-hmm. Used to live in a winter house downtown.
Well, somehow a cat or somebody disconnected me from the stupid thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. What happened? Well, this is really weird.
Did it change your output?
Oh, there it is. Okay, the cat jumped up here and pushed buttons. Sorry, I'm off my game tonight. Yeah, the fire was absolutely huge. I mean, this is from the north side.
Yeah.
It looks like a giant tornado. And it turns out it was a Walmart Supercenter on fire.
No, it was the distro, I thought, wasn't it?
It was a
distribution
distribution center.
And what I'm hearing is that they were working on the air conditioner on the roof,
Oh.
and it blew up. It exploded.
Oh, no.
Christy, I would rather eat anything out of that distribution center than something from Aldi. You have to turn your mic on, or do you want me to not talk to you? So what the article I wanted to talk about, we've speculated a lot on China. And China's ambassador to Ukraine came out today, and they've been very silent, actually, on what they're going to do. And then today they came out, and China's ambassador to the Ukraine, this is from Newsweek, has praised the strength of the Ukrainian people and promised to respect the choices of its sovereign government in a subtle move to balance its pro-Russia complexion. At a meeting with regional authorities in Lviv on Monday, Fan Jiangrong pledged to help Ukraine rebuild after the war. His message was a slight departure from the official line in Beijing, which still maintains general support for Moscow. China is a friendly country for the Ukrainian people, he said. As an ambassador, I can responsibly say that China will forever be a good force for Ukraine, both economically and politically, who relocated his diplomatic staff from Kiev after this week. We will always respect your state, and we will develop relations on the basis of equality and mutual benefit. We will respect the path chosen by the Ukrainians because this is the sovereign right of every nation. China will never attack Ukraine. We will help, in particular, the economic direction. In 1 year, our country imports goods from around the world worth more than $3 trillion. We are ready to help you develop. In this situation, which you now have, we will act responsibly. We have seen how great the unity of the Ukrainian people is, and that means its strength. Now, Putin can't be happy hearing that. What do you guys make of that? Brian, what do you make of that?
Never tick off a potential customer. That's the first thing. So it's reality. If you look at it, Ukraine is going to get billions, if not $1 trillion plus, of foreign investment to rebuild all this. And who's going to want to piss off that possible customer base to go ahead and say, hey, you know what, we'll come in with our engineering teams and we'll do it cheaper than the Americans and blah, blah, blah. That if Ukraine should survive all of this, maybe not mentally and maybe not socially, but physically, somebody's got to rebuild this country, and I'm sure the Chinese want to be first in line.
How do you take it, Reinhold?
I think it highlights just how isolated Russia is in this whole thing. The miscalculation that I think they made, that they thought that they were going to have some support for what they were doing. And they do have some support, but it's not state support. It's just random people who believe some propaganda support, right? So I think it's clear that China is saying no, and Belarus is saying no, and all the people that I think the only people who might be supporting their action might be North Korea, if they even know about it.
Oh, Eritrea and some others.
It's
I don't
limited.
I don't know if you want to weigh in, Christy, or not.
No, this is a much bigger brain stuff than what I can handle.
All right, well then I won't bother you. I'll just let you walk in the background. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a signal. After a few days of the American, what's his face? Fresh-faced kid looks like he's from Nebraska, who's the national security advisor, basically on television, going, Jake Sullivan, going, hey, we're going to sanction you, China, if you send them weapons, because Russia sent 70% of their forces in. There's 75% of them now. They've, according to the Americans, lost 30% of their equipment, and they're stalled. That you remember the terrifying prospect of that 40-mile convoy? I don't think that thing's moved in a week, has it?
No, it's split off. They did get some of it moving, but the problem was, especially for the Russians, was the guy who got really angry at the front of that convoy was the general, and he got picked off.
Yeah, they've lost 4 generals, which I understand. We didn't lose any generals in Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't believe, because you don't send them to the front lines. We lost 1. We don't send them to the front lines, Brian.
Right. Normally you don't. And actually, I know someone was involved, I mean, not involved on the bad side, but there was a general that was killed in Afghanistan during a tour where they had shut down the base and somebody had snuck guns in and everybody was unarmed and he just laid waste. But yeah, you usually have far better OPSEC to be able to hide your generals, and generally they aren't in the front line. So frankly, those people have to be replaced. I doubt they're doing field promotions. I mean, they may be to a point, but I'm sure there's probably a list of people Putin's probably going to send out there to go ahead and take over their jobs. And frankly, do any of them really want to?
Yeah, China's always been strong on sovereignty. Typically, I just think that when an authoritarian says that, they mean they're strong on their sovereignty and don't necessarily care about other people's sovereignty. But to be fair to the Chinese, in the last, at least in the 21st century, I don't think they've invaded anybody. We can't say that. So I will say,
Hong Kong.
Oh yeah, you're right. Never mind. Hong Kong, they lose.
Who's the only country to drop nuclear weapons? Who's the only country to invade multiple countries?
Okay, Putin,
and try to region build. What
are you watching? RT?
You should see. I do spend some time with some people who are from Russia. It happens to be, some people I know, and they were telling me, like, one of the things they were told was that the general who was supposedly killed, it wasn't really him. It was just somebody with his name. It was another soldier who had the same name, and that came across the thing, and it was like it's propaganda. And they're talking about the NATO laptops and all this other stuff. But what I find interesting are all the people who are kind of on the libertarian side of things, but they're way into the war of northern aggression side of it, who are not seeing that Ukraine has the right to succeed and stay succeeded.
No, I mean, I heard from one of my friends that Russia, what happened to Amash? Can you expand on that, dear Facebook user? I was told that basically, what was the secession thing that I read today? The United States had a secession. Why can't we? Or Lincoln invaded the southern states to keep the Union together. Why can't we do that? And this was an American friend talking to another American friend who basically was repeating a lot. Like, this is classic Soviet agitprop. And basically what happens, like Soviet KGB-backed propaganda, of which Vladimir Putin was a KGB officer, a lieutenant colonel in East Berlin, and his job was essentially psyops in East Berlin during the Soviet Union. And then when it fell, he went on to be a deputy mayor and then head of the FSB, the successor to the KGB, and then ended up becoming president because he was the only person that was not going to throw Boris Yeltsin in jail for corruption. And that's how he ended up president. The first election he ever stood for was president of Russia. He won it partially because they blew up. There was a false flag operation where Putin blew up an apartment building. Yeltsin's people blew it up. And then they blamed Chechen rebels. So my point being, this is a guy who is very well versed in psyops and propaganda, and classic KGB tactics are to just basically say the opposite loudly, repetitively, and to cause you to doubt yourself, basically to gaslight you. And another tactic in the Soviet Union is always talking about slavery and Jim Crow. Well, how can you lecture us on our civil rights? And it happened, like when people would push Barack Obama to stand up for journalists and other people being killed, like literally like journalists being killed in 2004. Once Vladimir Putin became president, he basically limited democracy to the point that there was one office that you could vote for in all of Russia. Everything else went from being elected to appointed, and that was the president of Russia. And then they fixed that multiple times to make sure he could win. And, so when you talk about that in 2004, they'd say, well, what about Jim Crow? What about your own voting rights problems? What about slavery? Who are you as a country to lecture us? You see a lot of that right now, and a lot of libertarians we help because we have spent 25 years deeply concerned about our own foreign policy and Iraq and the 800,000 dead there and the funding of Yemen and there's basically a holocaust of people. I forget what the number of dead children a day was, but it was significant. And those are Saudi Arabia is using Americans' weapons. So there's a lot here for them to look back at. But let's use logic, right, Reinhold? If it is bad to invade other countries and it's bad for us to invade Iraq, therefore it must also be bad for Russia to invade Ukraine and is not a justification that we do it so you get to do it too.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, is that we spend so much time arguing and fighting and saying we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be doing this. The majority of the people were saying, get out of Iraq, get out of Afghanistan, quit doing this for so long. And finally the government decided to listen up and get out of there. So yeah, we know exactly what the problem is with what they're doing, because we've done it and we stopped doing it so far. Hopefully we will continue to stop doing it. But that just because we did it 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago doesn't mean that Russia can do it now. Right. It's just, I mean,
you guys keep talking. I'm looking at this article you sent me right home.
Yeah, this is like pure. I was going to say something about that. It's like pure propaganda stuff. It's like, and it's not written. It's written by a certain person, but it was just picked up by that institute and reposted. But it's that sort of thing where it's like, is Russia really the one aggressing here? Isn't it really Ukraine? And they bring up the things like, oh, the Bay of Pigs and and worrying about those missiles in Cuba. And it's like, I've made that argument before, kind of flippantly, and I still, it's an important point. But what you don't realize, well, a lot of people don't realize, is that we were concerned about actual missiles being loaded into Cuba. There were Russian soldiers in Cuba all the way through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, they had a base there not too far from our base for decades.
Right.
And we didn't say that Cuba couldn't, exist. We didn't take over Cuba when we tried to screw with them a lot, but we never invaded them. Right. So it's like, yeah, I can see Russia being concerned about them putting nuclear weapons in Ukraine, but Ukraine's not wanting to do that. That was never really on the table. That was never anything that was really being suggested. And to be honest, we don't need missiles sitting in Ukraine. We've got missiles who can travel a fair bit of distance. We've got enough space. We don't need them right there. So why would we do that? Because if they're there and then that Russia does come in and take over, they get control of those weapons. So why would you put them right there on the line when you don't need to? It doesn't make any sense at all. All the arguments that Russia are making fall flat when you logically think about what they're saying.
Well, they're not just, a lot of them are just not justifications, and
just whataboutisms.
Yeah, it's whataboutism, and it doesn't justify it. I get and a lot well, what was I listening to? I wanted to hear what the David Axelrod podcast. What's that? Can't think of it. Political Hacks or something along those lines. And it's like former chiefs of staffs of like McCain's campaign, Romney's campaign, and Obama's campaign. They do a podcast together where they talked about how terrible Trump was. And so I listened to this week's episode, and it's like Chuck Todd wearing a Ukraine flag pin, or David Axelrod talking about how we have to win in Ukraine. Like, who's we? I think there's a lot of, I saw Matt Taibbi on Breaking Points yesterday talking about 1984 and kind of the some of it I disagreed with in his interview, because I just think there's like, I think we've all gotten so, and maybe this is his point. In 1984, you erase the language, you change the language, you erase history. It's all about living in the present. So you can constantly keep people in the present and worked up about the constant thing now. And we've kind of hit that point where everybody's sort of worked up on one team or another about the now, right? And David Axelrod saying, we're, saying we about Ukraine, and Chuck Todd wearing a flag pin for Ukraine this past weekend kind of shows you like it's a team sport. Like, we're not, Ukrainians are Americans somehow. To those folks, they just have, there's no national identity, I guess. And so to people who have spent the last 6 years talking about nationalism, it's an affront to them. So that's where I see where it's coming from. And then on the other side, I just sort of see this like permissiveness, a tacit permission of what Putin's doing, because of the whataboutism, the constant talk about our own bad foreign policy, or, like the more you learn about Lukashenko in Belarus and what he's been doing to immigrants there, and then what Poland's been doing back to them, by the way, you just sort of look at like this dictator in Belarus and go, why was Daniel McAdams at the Ron Paul Institute firmly on that guy's side, and firmly on the side of Maduro, and firmly on the side, like he had the flag pin for Belarus, right?
He's
Like,
got another video out today too.
I'm sure it's wonderful. I told you all about that guy. If you're not seeing it yet, but like if you look at Russia's record, if you look at who Putin is, this is a man that when various crises have happened, or when he has stolen elections, and like when the Caucasian school, and I don't mean white, but like the school in Caucasia land or whatever.
Caucasus.
Yeah, what was the school that was bombed?
Oh,
the Chechen school. All right, so do you guys remember the Moscow theater?
Yep.
Remember, like in the 2000s when the theater got taken over by Chechen rebels, or the school that got taken over by Chechen rebels?
Yep.
Well, the way that those ended was Putin sending a message to the world that he will not tolerate terrorism, and he gassed all of the people inside, including the victims. Like in the school, 300 people died that day.
Yep.
When the Chechen rebels had never really been outside of Chechnya, they were asking for basically Putin to say that he would end the war, which to a liar, like what a big deal is that? And he basically killed all of these children and their parents and like gassed them to death. And then when they were sent to the hospital where they could have been saved, the Russian government refused to say what gas was used on them. Like this, when the submarine in 2001 went down and there was an explosion, and the Kursk, he was on vacation for multiple days and just didn't act, and then just kind of said, yeah, like if you actually get into Putin and you study Putin, he's like Hillary Clinton times 10, right? Like, so I'm not on that guy's side. But again, we're on schedule. 2 weeks into this, you've got to choose a side. You've got to be for good or for evil. There is no alternative. Like, believe me, I'm more for Ukraine than I am for Russia. There's no doubt about it. Like, when you look at the war crimes and the bombing of hospitals, America bombed hospitals too in Iraq. Did we intentionally? Yeah, right, and we called it out.
Yeah.
Was there an intentional bombing of hospitals every single day? Was there was what was bombed last night? It was a theater where people were basically sheltering in place, and they intentionally hit that stuff. Yeah. Right? Like, these are war crimes. Yeah. So if I'm against the war crimes of my country, I'm against their war crimes too. All right. Go ahead, Brian.
There was a great 12-second clip that came out today of somebody in the press interviewing the mayor of one, I think it was either Kyiv or another part of the country, and he said basically, Vladimir Putin says that he is not attacking non-military targets. He's only attacking military targets. They're literally standing in front of a 20-story apartment building that's been hit by multiple rockets and tank shells. And the guy, of course, he speaks Ukrainian, looks at the guy who asked the question in English and says, bullshit. And he goes, sorry, is that military target? It's not. So it's just amazing that, yeah, there's a lot of whataboutism in this country, and a lot of it's kind of right, I want to say, along the lines of we should be looking back at the things we've done. I mean, this is the 52nd anniversary of the Miley Massacre. So we should be looking back at those things and say, these are things that we should also put into our hashtag never again book and keep forever. But that doesn't mean that you don't sit there and look at a country that's being invaded by its much larger neighbor in a, quote, denazification and turn a blind eye, say, well, we bombed a wedding, which is just as horrible. But we can't just sit there and look at it and just say, well, it's their right to do so or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, what's hilarious about the Nazi thing is, like, you watch Oliver Stone's documentary on Rumble that he put out about the Ukraine that he basically made with a Russian filmmaker. They talk about Bandera, and Bandera was a far-right guy who collaborated with the Nazis that killed 200,000 Jews in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
They totally skip over Holodomor and the mass starvation of 7 million Ukrainians. Like, we didn't mention that, right? And they also didn't mention that the scope and scale of Nazis in Ukraine is not as great as it's made out to be. It's in the thousands, not tens of thousands. This is not a ruling party. Like the German far-right party, I think it's ADM, that has seats in Germany, that's funded by Putin. Like, and I'm not saying like far-right in the way that like Chuck Todd would call these parties far-right. Like, they engage in neo-Nazi symbolism. They're beyond Charlottesville rioters, right? Like, so, and France has them. Marie Le Pen's party has a portion of them are neo-Nazis too. Like, and Putin funds all of these, runs psyops for all these different things. So I just find it strange not to outright condemn without qualifiers a lot of what Russia's doing. You know, you could be skeptical of Ukrainian propaganda and the ghost of Kiev, and you should. And, you know, I saw one that was like a top image, bottom image was the same, and then the top image had like an Italian TV logo over it, and then the bottom one was from like some disaster movie, you know, and then everybody was like, do you get it yet? Do you get it yet? And I'm like, how hard is it just to take the same screenshot, duplicate it, and slap a TV logo on it? But that's just proof and evidence of the corruption of them and they.
Everybody's got social media managers these days. Every conflict, every company, things like that. So why wouldn't we expect this thing to be waged? And by the way, the Ukrainians are waging it very well in social media. They've got everybody on their side, but it doesn't mean just because they're waging a good war in social media that it isn't a just war for them. I'm sure Zelensky has probably plenty of skeletons in his closet. First of all, he's a comedian. Second, he's on Dancing with the Stars. So, I mean, there's 2 strikes against him. But after that, it's, you know, okay, so if he's got skeletons in his closet, I mean, if we're going to start blasting people out because they have skeletons in their closet, we better do a lot more arming, especially here in the U.S. So,
I don't know if you want to hear a really hot take.
Sure.
That's the only kind you have.
The people who are going around with the Ukrainian pins on their lapels talking about how we stand with the Ukrainians, we love Ukrainians, and all of this, do they remember that it was 100 years ago that they implemented the first immigration policies specifically to keep out Eastern Europeans from this country?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, by the way, I mean, we aren't letting those Ukrainians in.
Oh no!
Oh yeah,
God, no.
That's the best part. It's like no, you don't come here.
The easiest thing possible.
Go somewhere else.
The easiest thing possible that won't start World War III is let Ukrainians in. We're not doing that, but we're crippling the Russian economy that Putin is interpreting as an act of war. We're possibly blocking them off from the Suez and Panama canals, and blocking Americans from trading with them. We're sending surface-to-air missiles to the Ukrainians. We're not, but we're not going to let you guys in. That'd be foolish. Not in a Democratic administration. Everybody, Reinhold, knows that Democrats are good for immigration and Republicans are bad.
Yeah. What I find interesting is that I despise Trump's immigration policies and his rhetoric and the things he put in place and what he did to block off the market of labor into this country to the point now we have full unemployment and wages are rising, which is causing everything to rise, right? Because people are doing the great quitting and resignation or whatever. And so people have to pay more for labor because of that blocking of labor coming into this country. And so I fought against that for years. Biden is worse than Trump.
Yeah.
If that's even possible, he is worse than
Who
Trump.
continued a lot of Obama's policies.
Yeah.
They just have better marketing.
Yeah. Maybe we can get Marjorie to go out in front of a parking lot, just like AOC did, and have her cry at the parking lot down south. Maybe that would change people's minds or something.
So
the right has the perfect opportunity to flip the switch and go back to being pro-immigration like they used to be years and years ago.
But it ticked off labor.
But they can't, because there's a base in their party that just doesn't want that element into the country. It's something that they're not going to expunge. So they're going to miss out on this perfect opportunity that the Democrats are handing them.
So Lucy
and the Republicans are handing all kinds of opportunities to the Democrats, and they're not taking them either. I mean, everybody's just being silly politically these days. I don't understand it.
All right. Well, we've had enough hot takes for one night. I'm gonna end the show here just because it's getting late. Lucy asked if Putin's the bad guy. I absolutely think Putin's the bad guy. We'll end on this. Go around the horn. I would invite you to read Masha Gessen's The Man with No Face. I'm about 70% done with it. It's really good. Really, she's a great writer. A former independent journalist from Russia that got squeezed out. She was basically like she was the Glenn Greenwald of Russia, I guess, and basically got chased out. I don't know how you can look at Putin and say, it depends on what, is Putin the bad guy? Well, his centralizing of power, his massive corruption, his stealing of elections, his constant invading of neighbors and using war crimes and gas to do it. Like, he's absolutely worse than America. We often talk about how bad America is and its foreign policy and how it is with its democracy and how Putin isn't the worst guy. I mean, he's up there. He's top 5. He has gay concentration camps. He has
plenty of ethnic fun.
He has killed, jailed, or exported every single person that is even remotely going to challenge him. When he runs in elections, he has token communists and far-right people run against him, the same people every time. Things like when he ran in his first election, re-election, I should say, I think in 2006, they would call the schools in all these different districts and say, your funding depends on you making sure that your people vote for Putin or don't vote. You have to go. So that's how he gets 90% of the vote. And it sounds a lot like teachers' unions, to be honest. But, when you start to read about Putin in Kasparov's The Winter is Coming or Masha Gessen's The Man with No Face, they just lay it out. All these incidents that you can go and look up with all of this evidence from all of these different journalists and the poisoned people that have been left in his wake. One guy started funding, he ran Yukos, which was the biggest oil company, and he started funding opposition parties. And he, in a televised conversation on C-SPAN or whatever, said, we should clean up the corruption in Russia. Putin confiscated the biggest company, put him in jail, confiscated his wealth, and he now lives in Switzerland. So,
he's had political opponents die from being poisoned in their shorts.
Yeah, polonium, stuff that you can easily find.
Yeah, the independent. So Chechnya, go look up the war in Chechnya, because 94 happens and Russia goes in and does what they're doing in Ukraine. They absolutely rubble the country of Chechnya because they tried to set their own independent way. Yeltsin sends in the troops. The war dies down. When Putin is trying to run for election the first time and nobody knows him, he restarts the war in Chechnya so he can essentially use that war with terrorists and uses the Chechnya terrorists over and over and over again as false flags to centralize power. So go look at the word Chechnya, where he now has a dictator installed. I mean, the Chechen War was what scared. Excuse me. So when you have all these countries, why did NATO expand? Well, you have all these countries like Poland that get their freedom in the early 90s elect pro-democratic people. And then they see the war in Chechnya in 94 through 96, and it scares the shit out of them. And so they want protection, and they have horrible economies because they're former communist countries, and they can't afford their own defense, and so they turn to the West for security guarantees. Ukraine was one of them. Go look up the Budapest Agreement, where we guaranteed their security for in exchange that they got rid of their nuclear weapons because we didn't want them falling into the hands of bad guys. And so all of these Eastern Bloc countries wanted into NATO because of Chechnya. So, in libertarian media, that's the side that you don't hear. Like, you just hear that the imperialist West wanted to expand NATO for no reason. Well, no, the Russians did stuff that caused that to happen. So,
Some of us still remember what the world was like in the 90s when the Cold War was still going on and we hadn't broken away yet. There's a song I remember from the 83 or 84 from a Christian rock singer that I like. It's called "Over My Dead Body," which is about how Russian soldiers were killing protesters in Poland.
Yeah,
for daring to.
The head of the Libertarian Party of Russia is in jail right now for anti-war protests. Like this.
Good.
This is not a good man. This is not a good country. Like the country's full of good people, but they have horrible leaders that 200 people run this country, steal from it, and then take their wealth and go and invest it in Western countries, and the Western governments love it because then they get that wealth invested in their countries instead of Russia. So that's why they're not wanting to sanction them. They don't want to give up the oil. They don't want to give up the investments and companies and real estate that gets bought. Like, why do you think that, that crazy piece of real estate in LA, The One, go look up the house, The One, that's like $250 million?
Right.
Like, who do you think is going to be able to afford to buy that? It's going to be a Russian oligarch, a Saudi Arabian prince. It's people with oil money who have stolen from their people. And the Americans and the Rush and the Germans and the English let it happen because they love the money. So, yeah, is Putin at fault here? Absolutely. If Putin was really anti-NATO, and I know he's anti-NATO, he'd invade a NATO country. If NATO didn't invent...
two bordering him.
If NATO didn't exist, Putin would invade Ukraine. Like, he's been talking about this since 2000 when he took over. Go ahead, Brian. Last words.
Yeah, last words. I mean, Putin's got surrounded by NATO because he's got the little piece out there in Archangel, I think it is, somewhere. I'm trying to remember the name of the city. That's a Russian part of the Russian Empire or Russian country, but it's surrounded by Latvia and Poland. Literally, you have to drive through either country to get to that part. And I just want to defend Reinhold here because I know he's listened to harder stuff than Striper. And if we need to pull out the hardest Christian rock contest, I'm game for it. But
don't diss on Striper because
I know
Striper, Petra. I mean, come on, Steve Taylor,
Striper, Petra, Saint, Triton. I mean, we can go through the whole list. Two things Reinhold and I have in common. All right, here we go. But the last thing is just basically, if you think that Putin can be right about this, that's fine. But you know what? History is going to prove you horribly wrong. You can suck up to as many dictators as you want, but if you're really wanting freedom for this world, Putin's not your guy.
Yeah, I just think you could take a clear-eyed view of who Putin is and say what it is, and speak boldly without the equivocations of, but have you seen the Americans? I think COVID and the forever wars have sort of gotten us into very comfortable lanes in terms of political language, and it's reflexive. And I don't think that the reflexivity really meets the moment, Reinhold.
It doesn't. And one thing I want to ask people when they're trying to figure out who's the worst person here, or who's the aggressive person here, or who's the one we should be kind of looking at. I'm trying to remember a time in modern history, in the last couple hundred, even U.S. history, where the person who attacked first was in the right. I can't think of anything like that. I can't think of any time where the person who attacked first, and even if you're talking about the Civil War, the South states attacked first. They attacked Fort Sumter. It was like, when where's that moral justification coming from that you can take over a country?
Like, what about
India?
What about Putin be a real leader? and like Putin has mishandled the relationship with other people too. Like, I've said it. The West mishandled the relationship with Putin in a lot of ways. But so did he. Like the story of Angela Merkel being terrified of dogs, and so when Angela Merkel comes to visit, he has his giant dog roaming around in the room. Like, this is a guy who lives and thrives off of intimidation. Like, he could if there was they're in the middle of having their ass kicked in Ukraine, and NATO is still saying, no, you can't join us. Like, if it was really all about NATO, then why doesn't Putin hop on a plane and like start some diplomacy and talk with NATO? Like, why? Where's his manhood?
Here's the thing, though. Ukraine couldn't join NATO. Period. End of story. The NATO charter has it to where if you have disputed territory at the time of that you're applying to join, you can't join NATO.
Like they have for eight years.
Yeah,
and I think that was part of the justification for doing that, for taking over the Crimea, was that, now we have disputed borders, you can't join NATO.
Right. So the next threat to them was the EU, which was going to have a very nice pipeline going through there from Turkmenistan to be able to feed them, to be able to compete with the Russians, and B, the Ukrainians tied into the European grid 5 years early. They finished the tie-in today. So,
and the thing, too, is that Ukraine has so many natural resources and top producers in a lot of areas that if they were to cut off ties with Russia to the point where they don't trade with them anymore, that's going to devastate a lot of Russia economy to do that. So they can't let that happen either.
All right. Well, we figured it all out. So go us. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the bonus show. Thanks to Brian. Thanks to Reinhold. Thanks to Christy out there in the back. I can't get to you fast enough to turn you on, Christy, but thanks for watching us here. We really do appreciate it, and we will see you again on Saturday. Bye-bye.